Hi, welcome to my channel Mostly Knitting. I'm Tash and it's Friday the 14th of April 2023 and I'm recording from Sydney, Australia. If you're a returning viewer, you know what to expect, and if you're new in this channel, I talk mostly about the knitting that I've been doing during the week, any other crafting if I have done any, and some plans and things that I've got upcoming, and then at the end a bit of chatter about my week. So in this episode, I don't have any finished objects, but I do have a new cast on, and I have lots of progress on my whips because I'm on school holidays as a teacher at the moment. I have a faux from the vault, which I'm wearing, and then I have a what's caught my eye, like a new little segment. So not necessarily upcoming plans, but something that might end up in my upcoming plans. So just things that I've noticed either on Ravelry or in other podcasts that I've thought, oh, okay, that's pretty. And so some imminent yarn purchases related to that, and then my upcoming plans, and then at the end a bit of chatter about my week. So I'll get straight into it. I like to start with my new cast on because that's, you know, the most exciting thing. And so this won't look like a new cast on because I cast it on 8 days ago. So this is a little bit more than 1 week since my last podcast. And I've made heaps of progress on it. So this is Ingalls by Caitlin Hunter. And this is what I've done in 8 days. And I've done lots of other knitting as well. So yeah, it's been a really productive week. So I am so happy with this. This is Ingalls by Caitlin Hunter, who's Boyland Knitworks. For the main colour, this sort of mauve here, I'm using Madelinetosh Pashmina. There's only a little bit left of the first skein. This is another whole skein. Madelinetosh Pashmina in the colourway Dust Weaver. And then the contrast colour that I'm holding, sorry, not the contrast colour, the mohair that I'm holding with it for the main colour is Kremke Soul Wool sort of mohair silk in the colourway 234 Mallow. So that's this colour here. And because there's quite a bit of difference in value, there's a bit of marling going on, but I actually think it's really pretty. It's quite soft. It's probably even less prominent than is showing in the video. Yeah, anyway, I'm really liking that. And then the contrast color, I tried quite a few different combinations, and this one was the second one that I tried and actually turned out to be the one I'm the happiest with. There we go. And that is, what was that? That's Madelinetosh Air Light in Ruby Slippers. And I've had that was stash yarn, that's leftovers from another project. And Rowan Kidsilk Haze and Blackcurrant, also leftovers from another project. So the only new purchasing was the main colour. And yeah, so the things that I've done differently, because I've made this before, this is my 4th version. So one of the things that I did differently in my second version, and actually both the first 3 versions, the ribbing calls for a 3.5mm needle and then a 4mm needle for the body. But you can see that's got quite a wide neckline. And I just found that, like, because it's quite a warm knit, and I really, even though I don't like anything too close, it's like this sweet spot. I don't want it too close and choking, and I don't want it out here where the back of my neck gets really cold. And I just find that's just a little bit too big. So I decided with this one, what I did differently, which I'm really happy about, is I cast on with the 1 needle size smaller, so the 3.25mm, and knit the first round, like in pattern, with the 3.25mm, and then I switched to the 3.5. And that is, I don't know if you can tell, that is actually massive difference. And I will actually try it on. It's substantial. I'll try it on because I'd like you to be able to see it on, because I've gotten past the body. And what I've done is I've just knitted off onto, I've got two sets of needles. So the front's on one needle and the back's on another needle, and then that way I can try it on. So the other things that I did differently, the pattern calls for this lace at the top and at the bottom, like before and after the color work. So I should probably put it down when I'm talking, otherwise you might not be able to hear me. One thing I would like to invest in is a microphone. Then that way it doesn't matter if I've got something in front. If I've got the microphone here, you can hear me better. But I'll show you. So you see there's lace at the top, like before and after the color work. And there was meant to be lace, like the same kind of lace here and here. But that, I noticed in projects on Ravelry, that lace means you've got this contrast color running across the lace, so you're going to see the floats, and I didn't want that, so I decided to skip it. Now in this jumper, this version, in my pink version, actually I'll grab that because it's right here. In my pink version, this was my first one, I did do it. I did it exactly the same. I never did I didn't do the lace in these sections, but I did do it the before and after. So, but then in this one, I just skipped the lace altogether. But what I did notice is that there's some increases here and the lace kind of hides those increases, so you don't really notice them. So if I show you this here, there's a whole bunch of increases here, but because they're kind of caught up in the lace, you can't see them. Now you can see here that's not blocked. I haven't blocked this yet. And this one here, obviously I made this one years ago. This one has been blocked, and you can see how that lace really opens up once you block it, and it's really pretty. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing how that looks blocked, but I feel pretty good about it. Anything else that I did differently? So yeah, I think that's it actually. I'm really happy with how it's going, and I'll just take this off. Sorry, it is my faux for the vault, so I will put it back on in a minute, but I'll take it off for now just so I can show you. I'll try this on. And you'll hopefully see, because I'll try the green one on as well afterwards so you can see the difference, because the green one's also Madelinetosh Pashmina, so it's the same yarn. So look at how, I'll come closer. You can see in that neckline, sorry, I've got the tail. I actually quite like keeping that back tail because it helps me remember which is the back and which is the front just as I'm trying things on. Sorry, mohair. Yeah, so that's where it's sitting right there. So if I have a t-shirt on, and because this is quite warm, I'm almost always going to have a t-shirt on underneath it, so you won't see the t-shirt here. I didn't have any trouble getting it on over my head. I was just a little worried but that's like, it's got enough stretch, but it's secure enough that it's actually sitting quite well there. And I'm about, I guess about halfway down the body. But the other reason that I think this is racing along is because it's a repeat knit with pretty much the same main color yarn. All my numbers are already worked out. Like I already know Madelinetosh Pashmina, like my gauge is the same. Now that's not always the case. Sometimes with different colorways, the gauge can be a little different, particularly with colorways that have a lot of dye in them. Like I find like that yarn itself is a bit heavier, so it weighs a skein of a much darker color. Obviously it's got more dye in it, it weighs a bit more. And I find it tends to actually be slightly larger in the stitches. But these two seem to be really similar. And yeah, I just think I love it. I cannot wait to finish this. So I'm like, that's why I've made so much progress in like 8 days, because I'm like, poor Ranunculus is sitting there having had almost no love, but yes, loving that. And yeah, I'll just keep it on until I try my next thing. Anything else that I was going to say about it? Yes, so because I know the numbers, I know how many rows I have left, I know how I'm going to do the sleeves and everything, and how long I'm going to knit them. So, you know, like it's just motoring along, no decision making really along the way. Oh, sorry, getting all caught under the so that's where I'm at with the first skein of Pashmina. I have 3 skeins, so I have this one and one more, so I feel quite confident I've got plenty of yarn, and I think I did use a bit less, just under 3 skeins with my green one. Oh, that's what I'll do. I will try that green one on now just so you can see the difference, just a different size cast, so one needle size down, 3.25 instead of 3.5, and the first row. And you can see, I'll turn around, you can see how that's got, like that's reasonably, oh, sorry, I should not talk facing the other way, like that, I'll show you. So that's quite high on the back of my neck. Yeah, I think it is time for a microphone. Anyway, so I almost don't want to take it off. So happy with that, but obviously I have to take it off to knit it. This is my green one, which has been worn to death. Okay. So can you see how much lower? You can really see my collarbones there, which you couldn't with the, I don't think with the pink one. Like it's not too bad, it's not crazy, but where it really bothers me is the back of the neck and how I get cold here. So you can see that that's actually quite a bit further down than the pink one. It's like, especially as I'm wearing it, it's sort of moving further and further down. So I love this one too though. This one's not going anywhere. I still wear it and I love it. But what I do is I make sure I've got a scarf or something so that I've got the back of my neck covered. Because even though my hair covers it a bit, maybe not quite enough to fully keep me warm. Right, so that's my first work in progress, which was the new cast on. The second one is Ilha by Orlane. I'm not going to say the last name. And for that one, I'll show you. That one I'm using, oh, you will see this is where this marker is where I was 9 days ago when I last recorded. So I've made quite a lot of progress. I finished the raglan increases. I have taken off the sleeves. It's got this really pretty cable down the side. Other than that, it's stockinette in the round, so that's going really quickly. And this is my main hospital. This one and the Ingalls are my sort of, once I got past the colour work, they're my main hospital knitting in the hospital. Okay, so this one, I'll show you, I've blocked it part way on the needles, and I'll just show you the difference between, I don't know if you can see it, that line there is blocked above and not unblocked below. It's not too bad, but it's definitely better once it's blocked. So how's this one going? So the thing with this one, I will try it on. I'm finding this was also really interesting for me. The neckline is so much wider than my first one, and I used the exact same needles and the same cast on numbers. So I was trying to figure out, now why is that? Because this yarn is even lighter in weight. Like I got a much tighter stitch gauge with this one than I did with my first one, which was Eyre, the Woolen Rabbit Eyre. So I think what it is, so that neckline is not nearly as wide as this one. And I think it has to do with the linen component. So when I cast this on, it's 100% wool, 100% merino. So when I do a long tail cast on and I snug it, you know, cast on the stitch, snug it, cast on the stitch, snug it, because it's wool and 100% wool, it's got lots of elasticity. So when I snug it, it makes that cast on stitch, you know, quite small. But with this one, there's 10% linen component, which doesn't have the same elasticity. So when I pull it together and snug it, it's not like, there's still a bit of like, the stitch itself is just a little bit larger than the cast on stitch is a bit larger in this one than the cast on stitch in this one. That's all I can put it down to. So just that 10% linen, I think, because I can even look at it when I look at the cast on stitches and I look at the size of them. Can you see there maybe you can't, the size, I'm gonna cover my face. Okay, maybe not. When I, you know the cast on stitch has a loop. Each one here looks larger than, you know, it sort of looks like a braid. The braid there, each individual loop looks a lot smaller on here. And it is, obviously, because this neckline's much bigger than it is on here. So I'll try it on. I'm not ripping this back, right? I've knit, this is the second skein, and I've knit probably 1.5 skeins. So I'll figure out a workaround. Like, it's not like I'm not gonna wear it. So I actually, that's another reason, like when I think I already said, when I like to have that tail there so I know which one's the back and which is the front. I mean, I have short rows, and so I can kind of tell a bit from that, but not as much. So can you see how wide that is? Like that's super, it's not horrible because it's not a jumper. Well, for me, I'm gonna make it a dress. It is actually, the pattern's a jumper, but because I'm gonna make it a dress, there's nothing underneath it except a bra. And I've got a tank on underneath it just so I can try it on, but I wouldn't normally wear a tank underneath it. I might, depending on if it's a bit see-through, I might need to wear some kind of slip or something. Or get like a like a long version of one of these, like a version that covers like my hips. So I was rambling about maybe getting like a full length version of like, you know, a tank that goes over your, you know, like a slip sort of thing. If it's a bit see-through, I might wear, like if you can see my undies, I don't really want anyone seeing my undies. So then I'll wear like something underneath it. Anyway, it seems to work okay. I'm really liking how it's coming out. I really love the colors. Let me see. Yeah, you can see it pretty well there. It's got kind of like a minty green under the base and then lots and lots of different speckles. So what am I gonna do about the neckline? I think it's okay. I think I'll be all right I'll wear it in fairly warm weather. I won't be worried about all my neck's cold or whatever. If it's really bothering me, what I think I'll do is I will, this was knit with a 3.5 millimeter neckline. What I'll do is I'll take a 3.25 millimeter needle, or even maybe 3.5 might work, pick up a stitch for every cast on stitch and then bind off. So it will only add like an extra row if you like, and a bind off is obviously a lot tighter than a cast on. So I think that's what I'll do. It might even work just with the 3.5 millimeter needles. And if it's too tight, I just rip it out and try something else, right? So either way, it's workable. It's a bit wider, but that's been a bit of a lesson for me, that don't just assume that because the gauge is tighter, you'll definitely get a smaller neckline. Here, this gauge is tighter. This is 26 stitches over 4 inches, and this one's 23 over 4 inches. And yet the cast on for this neckline has turned out wider than the cast on for this one. Exact same needles, exact same number of stitches. I think it's to do with the linen component and the lack of stretchability, so that when I'm casting on each stitch here, because it's like this one is sort of collapsed a little bit, like I've pulled it enough because it's 100% wool, it makes that stitch that much smaller than these ones. So that's been quite interesting for me. All right, so that's 2 works in progress so far. I'll just keep that on until I do my faux from the bulk, may as well. So what am I still also working on? So I'm working on Musselburgh, and this was, I'd already cast on before, but I've made some really good progress. So I can't remember where I was in the last podcast, but I definitely had started it. I can't remember if I'd got past the increases, but I'm more than halfway now. And this is really handy when I'm like, because it's like, even though this is stockinette in the round with just a tiny bit there, it's getting a bit bigger, and it's not as portable, even though I can take it with me in my handbag if I'm standing in line for coffee or, you know, whatever, just, you know, sitting in the car at red lights. I do actually have this on my lap. I don't know if that's a safety thing. Like if I had an accident, if the needles, I try to keep the needles pointing that way, not that way, in case someone runs into the back of me. But I do, you know, I can usually get a few rows like at red lights. And obviously because I'm not looking when I'm knitting, I'm looking at the green light, at the red light. I can see when it's changed to green. Anyway, so I've made quite a bit of progress on that. I'm more than halfway. It's 11.5 inches right now from the tip, and 11 inches is halfway for me. When I get to about 19 inches, that's when I'll start the decreases for 3 more inches. That'll be about 22 inches, which is the length I like. I'll put a link to my Musselburgh hat video that has all the different lengths and things that I've knit them. But I will block it when it gets to about 17 inches, because then like there might be a bit of growth, and I want it to be 19 inches, and then I do the decreases. So like if it increases an inch, then that's going to be an inch too long. And this is Madelinetosh Euro sock in the colorway Chill Pill. That yarn has been discontinued, I confirmed that. And I'm knitting it on a 3.25 millimeter needle, which is what I like to knit all my fingering weight Musselburgh hats in. Right, I think that's it for that one. Ranunculus. So not a lot of progress on Ranunculus. In fact, almost none. Not none, but almost none. Let me see. So I'd finished the body last time. I dropped a ball. So I'm knitting this out of Life in the, no, not Life in the Long Grass. I'm knitting this out of Julie Asselin Anatolia in the colorway Clementine. Such a gorgeous color. A really lovely orange. And not all oranges I find lovely, but I do find this one lovely. And all I've done is I've picked up the stitches for the sleeves, and I started magic looping, and then I tried to find my 40 centimeter circular, and I can get around it. I find magic looping, I don't mind magic looping sleeves, but what I don't like or don't enjoy knitting is all of this pushing the, you know, when you're knitting on 6mm needles and the stitches are very large, when they're on the cable, they sort of collapse a little bit. So then when you have to get them back onto the needle, you're really pushing them on, and it just slows you down. And so that's why I knitted onto this, the circular needle, the fixed circular needle, hoping that might speed it up a little bit, but you still have the same, it's a little better. But anyway, this, like, I'm not as excited. This is so gorgeous, but you know how you get distracted. So I got a bit distracted by the Ingalls sweater that I'm enjoying so much. The other thing actually too for this one, like when I knit in the evening when I'm watching TV with my husband, I don't like to knit as much on these, the large needles, because they're really quite noisy. Like if I'm just knit a few stitches, like you can even hear them clanking away. But when I knit, doesn't sound that bad here, does it? But I don't know, when it's noisier than, let's say, sock size needles, or even the 3.5s that I'm using for Ilha for this one. That's really quiet. The larger needles are a lot noisier. So yeah, that one, but you know, it's now just stocking it in the round for the sleeves. So I will make sure I do a little bit more on this one, because I want to get this finished. And the sleeves, like, because it's 6mm needles, it actually won't take that long. So I will make sure I do a bit more progress on this one than I have in the last week. And my last work in progress, which is not that exciting, because I think I did do a little bit. I did, from that marker, I did 1 inch on, that's the sport weight Gusset heel socks, using Skein sport yarn in Eventide, 2.75mm needles, and I've got about 3.5 inches left on the leg to go before that one's done. So I might just make sure I do a little bit of that here, sorry, cracking my knuckles, do a little bit more of that here and there, because I never really want to do too much on socks all in one time. So I might just occasionally do a few rows here and there on that, just to, you know, sort of get it finished. Right, so that's it for my works in progress. The next section is faux from the vault. So I have to find where underneath all of this, where my faux from the vault is. So this is Sunset Highway by Caitlin Hunter, who is Boyland Knitworks. And yeah, I'll put it up now while I'm not wearing it. Yeah, I'm really, oh, you know what? I forgot to just sort of stand up on this with this one. Maybe did I? I can't remember. Anyway, fair way down, but there's still a lot to go. I've got a ball and maybe a skein and 2/3 left. So I do think I'll have plenty of yarn for that one. So I'll put on Sunset Highway. So you can see there's short rows in the back, because you can see there's a lot less fabric there than there is at the back. And the yarn that I used is Hedgehog Fibers Skinny Singles, 3 colorways. The blue one might look a bit familiar if you've watched my other podcasts. That's the colorway Wish, which is what I used for my favorite Musselburgh hat. And so that for the Musselburgh hat, that was the leftovers. This main color here is Monet, so that's also Hedgehog Fiber Skinny Singles, and so is this color here, that's Genie. It's a really bright highlighter kind of one. And then this blue here, the lighter blue, is Tosh Merino Light in the colorway Dopamine. So this, now this was actually an interesting one here. This was 108 stitches cast on. So these are Caitlin Hunter patterns, and sorry, a Caitlin Hunter pattern. And this is the one that I showed last week, Zweig. That's also 100, it wasn't 108 stitches, but I upped the stitch count to 108 stitches because I didn't want it too tight around the neck. However, this is 108 stitches. this is 108 stitches. This is much wider than this one, because this one, the ribbing, the cast on and the ribbing is a 2.75 millimeter needle. This one's a 3.25 millimeter needle, and it's heaps looser. So that's been a real, and it's something that I'm so grateful actually for the podcast, to be honest, because I don't think I really would have put all of this together. But as I'm, preparing for the podcast, I think about the needles and the neckline and the cut, where it's sitting, and I've really realized just how much of a difference that cast on and the needle size, not so even necessarily the stitch number, obviously the stitch number matters, right? But what a difference a different needle size can make. See, this, I'm actually really happy with where that sits. There's a little bit in the back, but not too bad. So that's a 2.75 millimeter needle, 108 stitches with a fingering weight yarn. And yeah, like a fingering weight 100% wool yarn, and I really like where that sits. Anything else that I wanted to mention on this? I think, yes, one of the things I didn't love about this pattern, and it's just part of the pattern, right? You know it, eyes wide open going in, but you see there's quite a bit of ferrule on the sleeves, and I just, well, it's not heaps, I suppose, it's just this here and this here, because obviously that's a solid colour. I didn't enjoy that. I really don't like doing ferrule when I'm magic looping. You can do it, you just, when you turn the corner, and like when you start the second needle, you have to be really careful to make sure that the yarn, that your floats are not short cutting between the the cable and the new needle, because it's quite, so you have to really, it's a technique, it's not a big deal, but you just have to be mindful of it, and it's just a bit slower, and I just don't enjoy doing it. It's not horrible, it's worth it, but it's not my favorite. It wouldn't stop me if I really love the pattern, it wouldn't stop me doing it, but I go, right, okay, it's that row. Yeah, all right, well, that section of rows, that's what I have to do. The other thing that I noticed on this sweater, and you can't actually tell, on the outside, but what has happened, I'll show you on the inside, on my right sleeve, can you see that one of these long floats, this is the danger, one of these long floats must have got caught on my watch band or something. So you can't actually tell on the inside, like, I have to come at it from the other direction. I'll try and find that row on this side. Like it's around here somewhere, but like, I don't know, you can't really tell. Somewhere in here, what will have happened is all of the stitches will have collapsed in that little section. They would have all, because they've all been, had all of their yarn sucked out of them. So, it's not noticeable enough, and no one would notice it, but it's not obviously ideal. And I could take the time to pull out that, like find the row, like pull out, and if it was like, let's say it was like right here, you would really notice it and you'd want to fix it, but where it is on the sleeves, you can't see it, and I don't care. So, don't care enough to do anything about it. Obviously I don't want it to snap, I have to be a little bit careful putting it on, but other than that, it's fine. But it's, it is something to be mindful of. That's one of the reasons you don't want to have too many, you want to catch your floats. Sorry, that's my dog running around the house. We've got my daughter's home with her friend, so he's sort of running around from room to room, a bit excited. Okay, so that was my faux from the vault. New little section called maybe I'll put it back on. It's a little bit, it's gotten a bit cooler here now. It's not horribly cold, but it definitely the weather has cooled down. And that tends to happen around Easter here. That's when we get a bit of a change in weather. And obviously we're in fall, and then we're heading towards our winter. Right, so what's caught my eye? So just in what I've been like watching in podcasts or looking on Ravelry, this isn't a new pattern, but the Cumulus tee has really caught my eye. And I just, I'm sure a lot of people have knitted or seen it by Petite Knit. It's really pretty. And it's knit out of a yarn, Knitting for Olive pure silk. And it's a silk that's, where the moths have been allowed to escape, so they haven't been injured in the process. And it just looks really pretty. I like the versions that I see on Ravelry, so I thought I might actually try the yarn. So I'm going to put in an order I think they're in Copenhagen, and I'd like to try, I think I want the colour I want to choose is Ballerina, which is a really pretty light pink. And I've already got in mind, because I'm thinking a little bit more about my wardrobe now when I'm planning knits, and I've got this really pretty white long skirt and I don't have a nice top to go with it. And so I thought the Cumulus tee might be a nice top to wear with it. And that's also some of my other plans. So that Cumulus tee in a pretty pink in ballerina. And then I also have been looking at some of the projects. There's Casuarina Girl has put a few comments. Hi Karen, put a few comments about, and so and she's in Australia as well. And I had a look at some of her projects because she was mentioning that she'd made the Ranunculus tee. So I was looking at her Ranunculus, and then I saw some of her other amazing projects and got inspired. And that's what I love about being able to see other people's works on Ravelry or Instagram. You say, oh, look at that, that's gorgeous. So she's done some My Favorite Things camisoles, number 2 and number 4, and they're knit out of like those recommended yarns, like either Knitting for Olive Pure Silk or Knitting for Olive Cotton Merino. I also like the look of number 5. That one's really pretty as well. So I thought I'm actually going to do an order from them. And my friend Beck, we were chatting, and I thought maybe if we go together. So she's picked out some yarn as well. And I haven't finished picking it out, but I'm going to after I finish podcasting. I'm getting on and choosing some colours for the other camisoles. I've got to be a bit careful. Sometimes I have a tendency, I get carried away, and I'm like, oh, look at that, that's beautiful. And then I buy a whole bunch of yarn, and then it arrives, and I'm like, I don't like this yarn at all. So that happened to me with the whole Skein Coast. I just don't like that yarn at all. It feels like paper, and it's really fragile, and yeah, I just didn't enjoy it at all. And yet I'd bought all of these colors, and I mean, I was able to de-stash it, so it was fine, but I just don't want to be like just too nuts. So I'm going to buy some silk. It's just the problem with shipping to Australia and the cost of shipping. It's so far, and you sort of think, I've got to make it worthwhile. So at least with Beck and me doing it together, that's at least a bit of, like we'll cut down a bit of, carbon miles and a bit of shipping cost. If there's one package coming to me, and then I'll send one up to hers up to her in Brisbane, or if she's in Sydney, because she flies a bit into Sydney, I might be able to actually hand it to her in person. So yeah, so that's what I've been inspired by in the last week. And even though we're going into our winter, that doesn't bother me. Seasons, I'm not affected really by seasons with my knitting, because I know, well, if I don't wear it, I'll wear it next summer. It doesn't matter that summer's just finished. I'll wear it eventually. And also our spring and our fall is quite mild. So, there'll be time to wear those sorts of camisoles. The other thing that I saw, because, the click hopping, was when I had a look at the cotton merino, just to sort of think, oh, what would I like to make out of that yarn? I saw this pattern called person's version of Nordstrick. I forgot to write her name down, but I'll put pictures. Nordstrick shirt number 1. And that it's really interesting. I'm a little nervous about it. They're only about 21 projects, but it looked really interesting with all this ribbing on the sleeves. But it sort of comes out like this with ribbing and then straight down with stockinette. And I thought that could either look good or it could be quite unflattering. I just don't, or just look all lumpy here. I'm not 100% sure, but at least with knitting, if I make it, I don't like it, I can rip it out. It's not that big a deal. So, but I did think it looked really interesting and really beautiful. So I thought I might get some cotton merino for that. Yeah, so that's kind of like my what's caught my eye this week. And it's not all the way into plans yet, but it's on its way maybe. And it's a bit of a funnel, what catches your eye as to what you actually get yarn for, and then what you actually end up knitting. And finishing, we'll see. But out here, this is kind of what's caught my eye. So my plans, obviously those tees, if I get the yarn, or tees or camisoles. Another thing that I will definitely be doing, and it should be a very quick knit, on Monday I'm going to Skein Sisters, and I'm going to be picking up, because Beck's going to be visiting, and we're going to do a podcast together, which will be really exciting. But we're going to go together to Skein Sisters and, just bit of window shopping. I might buy something. I think I might buy a skein of yarn in their fabulous sock for a ranunculus. I'd like to I've used that yarn held double for my ebb dress, but it was held double, and I'd like to try it knitting it just by itself in a beanie, and obviously Ranunculus is not Ranunculus, why do I say that? Musselburgh is the, you know, the pattern that I kind of my go-to, so I'll probably pick up a skein of yarn for that. But what I was going to say was I'm starting a new class at the end of April for a My First Beanie. And so the idea is it's meant to be a pattern, like a class that's a project-based class, but it will help people learn a few important skills like knitting in the round, doing some decreases, ribbing, or the long tail cast on. But I haven't knit the pattern. Somebody else wrote the pattern and knit it. And so there's a sample there, but I don't want to teach a class for something that I haven't actually knit yet. That makes me uncomfortable. I want to knit the whole thing. So I'm going to pick up a ball of yarn. It's with Fiddlesticks Grange 14, so it's quite a heavyweight yarn. And it's got, like, I'll put a picture of the pattern up here. It's got a pom-pom on it. But the thing that kind of, not so much makes me nervous, but one of the reasons I definitely want to make it myself is that it doesn't involve any magic looping. The whole hat is knit with just a 40 centimeter needle. Now you might think, if you've knit hats, you know, like, well, what do you do when you get to the crown? And what do you do when you're decreasing? Like, eventually you're going to have to switch to DPNs or magic loop or something. Well, I think, and this is the rationale, so I totally get the rationale. When people are first learning how to knit, they usually don't want to invest too much money. And if you try to say to a person, here, knit a beanie, and it's going to cost you $60 in needles, and, you know, oh, you need this needle, but then you need this needle, and then you need the yarn. It just gets a bit like, whoa. And even though obviously the needles are not, like, you're going to use that for another pattern, people get nervous. Like, is this going to be a flash in the pan? Am I going to knit one beanie and then I'm not going to do it again? And then I've spent $60 on a beanie, or maybe I won't even finish it. So I think the rationale is what you have to do in the pattern is you get down to 27 stitches, and then 27, 24, something like that, 24 stitches, sorry. And then it, like, where you basically can only just get it around the needle, and then you put it on a tapestry needle. But I'm a bit, like, I know it's been test knit, but I'd like to do it myself. 24 stitches is not a lot of stitches to get around a fixed circular. I'm sure it's going to work, but it may not work with every fixed circular. Like, you know how some fixed circulars, the tips, like in my, sorry, this is a good example. In my Ranunculus, this needle tip is relatively long and quite a short, the cable portion is quite short. So I think for this needle, I would struggle to get 24 stitches. So if the needles because there's a kit, if the needles that they're providing, if the tips are quite short and the cable's a bit longer, then you might be able to do it. But I physically want to do it before I teach the class. So that's one thing that I'll be doing next week, because I'll be picking up the yarn on Monday. Because the gauge is so big, and I think it's, yeah, I'm sure it's 6mm needles, a beanie, 6mm needles, it won't take me very long to knit it. So I'll definitely have that done by the next podcast. Not the one that I record with Beck, but my next regular one. So that's upcoming plans as well. And then, just in case, might be boring for you if you've already watched my other videos, but I'll just put, just in case this is your first one, I'll put pics up of my other plans. I want to make 2 more sorrels. I love this pattern, it's really beautiful. I'd like to make a pink version, and this is my pink yarn. And I'd like to make a purple version, and this is my purple yarn. And I also want to make the climb socks, if not that pattern, at least those colors, by Jane Richmond, so that's upcoming. And I also want to make another Ranunculus, but more a worsted weight version in some leftover purple Barocco remix. So that's upcoming. Right, so this is turning out, I didn't think this was going to be a very long video. This is turning out to be quite a long one. So that's no sewing this week, and not likely to be any sewing. While I'm, even though it's school holidays, I'm visiting my dad in the hospital a lot, so there won't be any, no sewing, I think, at all, as long as he's in hospital. So the last little bit of the video is my what's happened in my week and what's upcoming, so personal stuff. So if you're leaving now, thanks so much for watching, and if you've enjoyed the video, if you can you know, do the little thumbs up like, and if you haven't subscribed, it'd be really nice if you subscribe, then, you know, I pop up in your feed or whatever. And yeah, so yes, thanks for being here, and hopefully I'll see you next week. or maybe even earlier with my episode with me and Beck on Monday. So personal stuff. So school holidays started last Friday, which was Good Friday, so I've had a full week now. My dad went into hospital 2 weeks ago from today, so he's been in hospital obviously since then. He had a fall and he's been in bed for the last 10 days, but he is getting better. So the infection, he actually had a blood infection that seems to be clearing up, but because he's been in bed for so long, they now need to spend a bit of time getting him out of bed and back to getting himself to the toilet and all that sort of stuff. So I've gone in every day except when I was in hospital myself for a procedure. So it's just, that's my school holiday focus at the moment. Spending time with him. I just take my knitting and I sit and we chat, and if he falls asleep I can just sit and knit while I'm waiting, and I just make sure that I'm there for him for anything he needs, because obviously when you're in hospital you just can't, like, you don't have you want something, you might feel like a coffee or a cold drink, and that's it, just whatever, something that you need. If he needs me to get something from his aged care facility, I just want to be around, and I feel really grateful to have the school holidays to be able to have time to do that. What else has been happening? So the other thing that I am doing in the school holidays, like, I don't spend all day at the hospital, and he wouldn't want me there all day. I'll go for, between an hour to 3 hours max, and usually an hour and a half. Sometimes the kids will come with me, or my brother came and visited, or my mum might come. But yeah, I just feel I'm only half an hour away from the hospital, so it's really easy. And the other thing that I'm doing in the school holidays, which I like to do a lot of, is going on bushwalks. So I've been on a few already. I've got another one booked in for tomorrow. And yesterday I went with my friend Amy, and she's the one that I made the DK socks for, and they fit her, yay. So we went it was her birthday yesterday, so I actually got to give them to her on the day, and we went for a bushwalk. There's a bushwalk like just like a tiny bit up the road, this gorgeous bushwalk, and we saw an echidna. I didn't get any video. They waddle, they're so cute. They're just gorgeous, but I did get a photo, so I'll put a photo of him. It was just lovely. Like, when you spot wildlife on your walk, as long as it's not a snake, I don't want to see any snakes, but and we definitely do have snakes around here, but I haven't seen one on the walk, but I did see an echidna. I have seen, I will find the photo and put it up, I've seen a powerful owl on a walk, and he was so still. This was like a year ago. It was amazing. He was just like eyes just staring straight ahead, and he had a possum in his talons. It was a bit freaky. Like that. I think the possum was well dead because he wasn't moving at all. Yeah, so just lots of amazing wildlife in our area. So that's what I'm doing mostly in the holidays: bushwalks and seeing my dad. Let me see, anything else? Oh yes, so I was really happy that my dad actually did get out of bed today, and he's sitting in a chair now, and sorry, just moving my notes over. And he doesn't like being in bed. Like, he won't read, he doesn't watch TV, just I don't know, it's actually quite depressing for him. So now he was sitting in a chair, and he actually asked me to plug his Kindle in and charge it up, and he might actually read today. So I think that's really good for his mental health. So he's doing better. Just really quickly, my procedure, the endoscopy and colonoscopy, was really horrible. The whole prep work, it's not normally that bad, but I don't know. I didn't enjoy it. Nobody enjoys it, right? But what I did feel really good about was there's no cancer, no nothing like that, no stomach cancer, no bowel cancer. I do have a lot of stomach issues, but they're not major ones, I hope. And as you do, this is not a medical podcast, so I'm not going to go into this in depth, but I thought I'd just briefly mention, what happens, like when you read the report. I've got an appointment in 2 weeks with her, but there's nothing much in the report. They've got to send samples off to get tested and stuff. But of course I looked, and she's testing for something called disaccharides, and I was like, what's a disaccharide? So I Google it, as you do, and apparently it's like complex carbohydrates or whatever. Your body, when you eat them, it breaks it down into simple sugars so that it can get absorbed. And she's looking to see, if the enzyme that breaks that stuff down into simple sugars, it's either missing or there's not enough of it, and that stuff, instead of being broken down and then going into the bowel, it's just going straight into the bowel, and then it's getting broken down in there and fermenting and all sorts of disgusting stuff. So I'm thinking that might be what it is. I've got an appointment in 2 weeks, so I'm going to experiment, not crazy, but cutting down or like cutting out those foods that are sort of problem foods, so that when I go see her, like I might actually have a bit of extra evidence. Look, this could be a waste of time, but honestly, it's just cutting stuff out of your diet. It's not that big a deal. And often a lot of gut issues, diet change can help, but if you have no idea what to cut out, and you're just guessing, right? So at least with this disaccharide thing, there's a like disaccharide elimination diet. You know, you just get rid of nuts and seeds and, well, it's a lot, butter, milk, you know, grains, all this sort of stuff, a bunch of stuff, but there's still a lot you can eat. So I thought I'll try that for 10 days so that when I go into the appointment, I might have a bit of additional actual evidence as to if that's easing any of my symptoms. So that's enough of the medical stuff. But yes, all the big nasties are ruled out, which I'm very relieved about. So that's enough of that. Coming up this week, it's my daughter Alex's 18th birthday tomorrow. Yeah, so I've got an elder daughter, Mia, she's 20. Alex is turning 18 tomorrow. And then my son, Zach, is 15 and a half. So it's a big, it's a big day, 18. That's the legal age for drinking here in Australia, which is what makes it a big deal for kids. So, well, I'm sure there's other big deals. You get to vote, but I don't think they're quite as excited about voting as they are about drinking. So we're going to go out for dinner, and then I think she's going to go clubbing. Not just drinking, clubbing. You can't get into a club if you're 18, and she likes to, go out and stuff. So she's doing that afterwards, after our dinner out. So that's tomorrow. And my two other children, so not the 18-year-old, the Mia and Zach, they are going on a youth camp next week, Monday to Friday. So Alex is still home, but Mia and Zach are gone. So my husband and I, and Alex is, out a bit. So my husband and I might go out for a few dinners that week. I'm not going to go away anywhere. I might have gone away somewhere, but with my dad in the hospital, I'm not going to go away anywhere. And look, I like going away on holidays, but I also love being home too. So, I'm a bit of a homebody. I enjoy being home. And I definitely want to, as long as my dad's in hospital, I want to stay close. So I think that's it for, and of course my friend Beck is going to be in town from Brisbane, so I will get to see a friend. So, and I'm going on lots of bushwalks and things. I'm doing really lovely stuff too. So yeah, it's been, I just like having that bit of a break of school holidays, not sort of, not preparing and teaching lessons and everything. I love my job, but I also love the holidays too. So, right, I have talked a lot, so I think that's time for me to sign off. I guess it has been 9 days, so hopefully do a video recording with Beck on Monday, and then I'll be back to maybe a new video, a regular one on Thursday. Anyway, yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week, or maybe on the video from Monday. All right, bye.